Hi, I'm Hayley Victoria and welcome back to my crime and policing channel. In today's session, we're going to start looking at forensic psychology. This is a subject which fascinates the students where I work, and it fascinates me, if I'm going to be honest, because, we study crime because we want to know why, right? Who, what, where, when and why. And what better than to look inside the minds of those who are committing the crimes? Cool, right? That's what forensic psychology is all about. So the word forensic means like in the court of law. Psychology is the study of obviously the people's minds, the brains. So we've got that, but in the court of law. So we're looking at people's minds in relation to crime. So we're looking at people's mindsets in relation to crime. Now then, that should be ringing alarm bells here, there and everywhere, because as you know, to commit a crime, there are two elements we'll look at. That's mens rea and actus reus. Now, mens rea is your guilty mindset. Got a guilty mindset, right? Actus reus is a guilty act itself. Now, I could sit here all day thinking about killing someone, and I'm not committing any crimes. So when I start to act on that, I start to verbalise and put it into action, that's when you're actually committing crimes. But you could think about whatever you want. I'm not saying you should be doing that, by the way, but you could think about committing crimes all day, every day. And as long as you don't do anything about it and it stays in your head, you're not technically committing any crimes, because you need both elements of those things, mens rea, actus reus, right? So now we're looking at forensic psychology. So we're looking at when we use psychology in terms of crime and criminality. And this is where it gets super interesting. So there are a couple of models and stuff I'm going to talk through. We're going to look at what kind of profiling we do. So offender profiling, geographical profiling, all the profiling. We're going to look at FBI processes, going to look at lots of different typologies in relation to serial killers and stuff, because it's really super interesting. So first of all, let's have a look at what a forensic psychologist does and the uses they have in the courts of law. So a forensic psychologist might be able to help explain why someone's doing what they're doing, why they're committing those crimes. They might be able to help us distinguish what the MO is, so the modus operandi, which is kind of like the telltale signs or the ways in which people do stuff at crimes. So if you look at Jack the Ripper, his MO was very clear, wasn't it? The way he killed someone, where they left them, etc. Explain the manner of how people commit the crimes, provide testimony about the offender and subsequent ways of dealing with offenders, looking at their treatment and rehabilitation, if it's possible, is it suitable, that kind of business. Explain what leads people to committing crimes. What's happened that made that person do what they did? And there are some things, some veins that run through a certain type of typology of serial killers, which we're going to look at in a bit, and they can be indicators of why people have done what they've done. And they're not saying that everybody's had these backgrounds and circumstances are going to turn out to be a serial killer. They're just things that they have in common. So it might be those people who, when you look at people who like the power and control aspects, they start off very small, squashing ants, pulling spiders' legs off. Then you get a little bit bigger, they start squashing hamsters, start hurting cats and dogs, start hurting sheep in fields. But it doesn't stop there, because the thrill-seeking element of it, or the power and control, it's not enough of a challenge. You're not getting the same kick out of it. And that's when they move on to people, okay? There are different types of profiling. So you've got crime scene profiling, and that's where you're gathering all the different elements and evidence and information from the crime scene to generate a profile, a full picture of an unknown offender. There are two categories when we're looking at crime scenes with the FBI process, which are disorganised and organised crime scenes, which I'll go into in a little bit. Then we get offender profiling. And that's when we're collecting all data about the offender, that person, in order to try and picture the characteristics of the person involved. And then we have psychological profiling, and that's where they use a set of standard personality tests and interviews to assess the extent to which the individual fits that known personality template of a certain type of offender, such as a child abuser. So I mentioned the FBI profiling process earlier, and there are 4 stages to that. There's stage 1. Now, stage 1 is your data assimilation, and there's loads of sources of data. You've got police reports, crime scene photographs, pathologist reports, all the data, all the paperwork, everything, all the data. Stage 1 is gathering data, your data assimilation. Stage 2 is your crime scene classification. Now, I mentioned that before. There's disorganised and organised crime scenes. Then there's crime reconstruction. And then in stage 4, they start looking at profile generation. And that's when they start to develop these hypotheses about the demographic characteristics, physical characteristics and behavioural characteristics of the killer. So they're your 4 stages of the FBI profiling process. I'm going to focus on stage 2, which is crime scene classification, so organised and disorganised. So when you say organised and disorganised, you might be thinking like, oh, I'm super organised. I make sure that all my socks are put in the right drawer. You know, I don't like my hair shampoo stuff to be next to the conditioner or whatever. I'm really good at managing my calendar. Don't matter what's in your mind. Disorganised, you might be thinking about, like, the inside of my car. It's a bin in there, I'm telling you. Ask any of my policing students what it was like in police training when they used to come and search my car. Treat for the eyes. But yeah, not for anything else, unfortunately. Right, so that's totally different in the world of killers and crime scenes. So an organised crime scene, they exhibit like a methodical approach to stuff, very carefully planned. No evidence is left behind, very, very little. They've really thought about what they're doing. Definitely a great degree of premeditation and planning in there, and control. That's your organised crime scenes and your organised killers. Your organised serial killers are generally like really antisocial, psychopathic. They know right from wrong, so they've got mental capacity, but they know what's right and wrong when they do it anyway. They show no remorse. They've generally got above average intelligence, or average intelligence, can be attractive, married, have kids, very charming, very charismatic. Yeah, very good at getting people to do what they want, very manipulative. These are the signs of an organised killer. Now, your disorganised people, killers, sorry, not just people. I'm sure if you're disorganised, you're not a killer. Your disorganised killers aren't like that, generally. You can get mixed as well. People are both organised and disorganised, depending on what happens. But with your disorganised, your typical traits would be evidence left here, there and everywhere. They're not very good at the clean-up. So they might leave blood, DNA, fingerprints at the crime scene, very sloppy. They generally don't make any attempt to move or conceal the body. They might be young, under the influence of drugs and alcohol. They might be mentally ill or incapacitated. It does say that they often have deficient communication skills and social skills and below average intelligence. It says from a disorganised, dysfunctional family too. I'm from a dysfunctional family and I've never killed anybody, so there, have that, scientists. With the disorganised killers, that often have a history of sexual abuse and physical abuse from people close to them, mostly family members. They may have sexual aversions or other pathologies. Maybe they're uncomfortable with their own sexuality, and that's why they're going for a particular demographic of victim. They're often isolated from others, live alone, frightened or confused during the commission of the murders. So they're completely different to the organised, who are premeditated, know what they're doing. Disorganised is frantic, okay? So imagine where we've got one very premeditated crime scene, no evidence left behind, really thought about it, might have a good knowledge of forensic evidence gathering about, criminology and stuff like that, in order to not be caught. Disorganised killers, frantic, okay? So you've got those 2 different personality types there. Sometimes you do get mixed, and we'll look at some people who are of that type later on. It's been said there are 5 types of serial killer, and this is Holmes and Holmes from a long, long time ago. That's later been categorised into 4, with 2 of them being merged together in terms of hedonistic. So the first one is visionary killers, then your missionary, then your hedonistic, which includes thrill seekers and lust. Then your last one is power and control. And they're very different, and not always is one of somebody one or the other. Sometimes there's a mix of a couple. And if we look at some famous cases, then you might be like, oh yeah, it makes sense, all right? So when we're looking at visionary, that's when people are kind of suffering from a break with reality, and they think that they've got to do these kills because they're hearing voices telling them to do it. Maybe the God's telling them to do it, the devil's telling them to do it. Somebody's telling them they have to do this, okay? And it's like they've got to kill a particular type of person, quick, act-focused killings, and seeing it as a job to be done. It's not like they're not getting any gratification otherwise out of it. They have to kill these people and rid the world of it because God's telling them to. That's your visionary killers. Mission is where you get a mission killer is focused on the act of murder itself. They're compelled to murder in order to rid the world of a group of people they judged to be unworthy or undesirable. Now, it might be that they don't like gingers, like me. It might go for people like me. It might be that they don't like sex workers or homeless people or the LGBTQ plus community, maybe something like that. Lust killers, so we're looking at hedonistic, we've got lust and we have thrill seekers. So your lust killers are doing it because they get off on it. Simple, right? They get a kick out of killing. And that's when, same with thrill, they get a thrill out of doing it as well. And it might be that after with your lust killers, it then tends to lead to things like cannibalism, necrophilia, dismemberment are quite prevalent in that type. So think of people like Dennis Nielsen when you think of your lust killers. Thrill killers like the excitement and pleasure of killing. And once they've killed them, they lose interest. Then they go on to the next one, and next one, and next one. And maybe in more quick succession, maybe they start to make a couple of errors. They get a bit sloppy because they like the risk. They're your thrill seekers. And then the last one is your power and control. They think they are God. They think they have this, they're the master of what they do. They think they're the bee's knees. They've got this power over people. And this kind of person, what I would think in popular culture would be like Ted Bundy, likes that the power of being in control of other people's lives. Similarly, Harold Shipman, I would see as a power control killer. Okay, so looking at some people then, like I mentioned before, when I'm looking at visionary, so I know that it was said that, the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, was big into Satan, thought the devil was telling him to do things. But if you look at the way he killed, it was also very disorganised. So it was very frantic, messy scenes, left stuff everywhere. But he also seemed to, like he was a bit of a thrill seeker as well. Ted Bundy, power and control for sure. Loved having power and control of people. Like I mentioned, Harold Shipman. Your mission, people want to go and kill people of a certain type. So you look at the Suffolk Strangler, who was primary aim and objective was to kill sex workers. And then your lust and your thrill seekers, like I said, Dennis Nielsen. And I'll go through their profiles individually in individual videos. What I wanted to talk to you today about was obviously the FBI profiling process and Holmes and Holmes, typologies of serial killers. Next time we'll look at Cantor and Young's as well, because that's super interesting. And then we'll start putting together some profiles of actual people. Like I mentioned before, and I'll go on about it until the cows come home, I do talk about real crimes, serial killers, and such. None of that is in a glamorization process because I think they're all evil. There's no other word to say it. There's nothing cool about a serial killer, okay? Because there are lots of victims attached to these crimes. The only reason why I'm talking about it is to talk about science and for my learners and for anybody else at home to learn something together. What I don't want to do is for people to think in any way do I, like I said, glamorize or idolize any of these people because they are bad eggs. Serious 10 out of 10 bad eggs, okay? So next time we're going to focus on one in particular. I might start with Eileen Warnos. So when we do our next forensic profiling video, we're going to be looking at Eileen Warnos. Then we'll look at Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, Harold Shipman, and maybe Dennis Nielsen. We'll do like a bit of a series. And if you guys are enjoying it, we'll do some more. Okay, so until next time, stay safe, look after each other, and please don't commit any crimes. Bye.